Today, we're going to dive into a pretty fascinating and, let's be honest, a really provocative concept from our source material. It's a theoretical framework for engineering human intelligence, and it's called Project Superhumans, a Neugenics simulation framework. Now that word, Neugenics, it's definitely chosen to make you think, building on a really fraught history. This whole idea is going to take us right to the edge of science and ethics. So, at the very heart of this whole framework is one of the biggest questions we could possibly ask ourselves. Can we actually, scientifically, design a more intelligent human being? I mean, it's a question that really pushes the boundaries of biology, of technology, and for sure of ethics.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the framework itself. Then, we'll get into the science of how the brain works, its plasticity, and then the genetics behind it. From there, we'll see how AI could be used to simulate a smarter brain. Check out the source's actual blueprint for enhancement, and then finally, we'll just kind of chew on what this all means for the future of human intelligence.
All right, so let's kick things off with the big idea itself, the superhuman framework. What in the world is our source material actually talking about here?
According to the source, this is a seriously ambitious theoretical project. The main goal? To use advanced simulation to first understand and then actively upgrade our cognitive abilities. Yeah, you heard that right. Think of it as this bold, kind of crazy mix of neuroscience, genetics, and artificial intelligence all rolled into one.
But you know, before you can even think about enhancing intelligence, you've got to understand it. So that brings us to the biological nuts and bolts, the just incredible plasticity of our brains.
So the main target for all this enhancement is something psychologists call the G factor, or general intelligence. You can think of it as the raw processing power of your brain, the thing that fuels your ability to reason, to solve problems, and to learn. It's basically the foundational cognitive engine that this whole framework is trying to upgrade.
And how does that engine actually work? Well, there are two key processes going on. You've got neurogenesis, that's the birth of brand new neurons, which is super important for learning and memory. And then there's neuroplasticity, which is the brain's amazing ability to just rewire itself, forming new pathways as we learn and adapt. According to the source, these are the fundamental biological levers you'd need to pull.
Okay, so we've talked about the brain's hardware. Now, let's switch gears and talk about the software that programs it, our DNA.
And get a load of this number. It's pretty staggering. The source material estimates that anywhere from 50 to 80% of the difference in adult IQ is because of genetics. That suggests our DNA provides a really powerful, though, not a totally absolute, blueprint for our cognitive potential.
Now, what's really important to get is that there isn't one single genius gene. Not at all. Instead, intelligence is what's called a polygenic trait. That just means it's influenced by thousands of genes all working together, with each one adding just a tiny little piece to this huge, complex puzzle of our cognitive ability.
And this table here shows just a few of those key genetic players. For instance, you've got the BDNF gene, which is absolutely vital for creating new neurons and connections. Then there's CONT, which messes with dopamine and affects your working memory. And genes like ASPM and ZOB2 are fundamental for just how big your brain gets and how it develops. It's this complex genetic orchestra that the framework wants to figure out.
So, once you have some understanding of the biology and the genetics, the framework then turns to technology. I mean, how could you even begin to model something as insanely complex as a human brain getting smarter?
Well, the source material proposes this three-step AI simulation. Step 1, use artificial neural networks to copy neuroplasticity, basically mimicking how our brain rewires itself. Step 2, add new nodes into that network to simulate neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons. And then step 3, train this digital brain on cognitive tasks to see if the changes actually make it better at solving problems.
And this is where we get to the most speculative and definitely the most controversial part of the whole framework, the source's blueprint for actually making humans more intelligent. It is so important to remember that what we're about to talk about is the theoretical application proposed within the material we're looking at.
To give you a little historical context, the source points back to the work of Francis Galton, who was the first to propose that intelligence was hereditary. Now, this idea from the 19th century, it laid the groundwork for eugenics and the modern study of genetics, and its shadow really hangs over any talk of cognitive enhancement today.
The source lays out 4 main strategies. Some of them might sound pretty familiar, like using pharmaceuticals or boosting neurogenesis with diet and exercise. But then it moves into much more radical territory,
proposing things like gene editing with CRISPR and even putting selective breeding programs into place.
And it goes even deeper. The source material describes something it explicitly calls negative eugenics. The concept, as it's laid out in the framework, would involve using genetic counseling to discourage people from having kids if they have genetic markers for what it defines as lower cognitive potential. This is, without a doubt, the most ethically explosive idea presented.
So, after that whole journey, from brain cells to gene codes to AI simulations and these really controversial blueprints, what does it all mean? What's the future of human intelligence look like?
At the end of the day, this Project Superhumans framework, as presented in the source, really works as a big thought experiment. It draws a line from the science we know today about biology and genetics to what might one day be possible with technology. And it forces us to face some of the deepest questions about who we are and who we might become.
And that leaves us with one last massive question to think about. It's not really about whether we can, but whether we should. If humanity ever gets the power to rewrite its own source code, what path do we choose?